The kitchen clock read 5:47 a.m. when Naomi's hands stopped shaking enough to crack the eggs. 3 of them just how Thomas liked it. Sunny side up, edges crispy, yolks intact. Her left eye had swollen almost shut during the night, and the bruise along her jaw had deepened to purple. She caught her reflection in the toaster's chrome surface and quickly looked away. The eggs sizzled in the cast iron pan. She'd learned to cook them perfectly over 9 years of marriage. Not too much oil. Medium heat. Salt and pepper from exactly 6 inches above the pan, the way his mother had taught her during their first Thanksgiving together. Back when she still believed love could be patient. Before she understood that control wore many masks. Her ribs ached where he'd shoved her against the counter. That had been around 11 p.m., maybe midnight. Time had blurred after she'd made the mistake of questioning him about the withdrawal from their joint account. $3,000 gone, and when she'd asked, his face had changed. It always did. Like watching clouds cover the sun. Where do you get off checking the bank statements? His voice had been quiet at first. That was always worse than the yelling. The quiet meant he was deciding how to punish her for stepping out of line. That's my money. I earned it. Our money, she'd whispered, and that had been the wrong thing to say. Now she plated the eggs alongside turkey bacon, wheat toast cut diagonally, and a small bowl of mixed berries. She poured his coffee into the blue mug he preferred, added exactly 1 teaspoon of sugar and a splash of cream. The routine was armor. The precision was survival. She heard his footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, deliberate. Naomi placed his plate at the head of the table and retreated to her seat at the opposite end. 6 feet of dark wood between them had never felt like enough distance. Thomas entered the kitchen in his gray suit, already knotted tie, leather briefcase in hand. He was handsome in that clean-cut way that made people trust him immediately. Square jaw, neat haircut, straight teeth. At church, women told her how lucky she was. At his office Christmas parties, his colleagues called him a stand-up guy. Nobody knew that stand-up guys could back you into corners. That clean-cut men could grab your hair and call you stupid for having opinions. He sat down without looking at her. Picked up his fork. Cut into the eggs with the side of it, watching the yolk bleed across the plate. Coffee's hot, Naomi said. Her voice came out steady. She'd practiced that. Making her voice work when everything inside her wanted to scream or run or simply disappear. Thomas took a bite. Chewed. Swallowed. Reached for his coffee and took a long sip. His eyes finally landed on her face, scanning the damage with the casual interest someone might show a dented fender. Put some ice on that, he said, gesturing vaguely with his fork. Don't need people asking questions. The newspaper sat folded beside his plate. He opened it, shook it once, and began reading the sports section. Naomi watched him eat the breakfast she'd prepared with hands that had trembled from pain and fear. Watched him act like the previous night had been nothing more than a bad dream that dissolved with morning light. She touched the bruise on her jaw carefully, feeling the heat of inflammation beneath her fingertips. This wasn't the first time. But if she had her way, it would be the last. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out under the table, keeping it below Thomas's line of sight. A text from her younger sister Rita. You okay? Call me when you can. Naomi's thumb hovered over the screen. She wanted to type everything. The truth. The whole ugly truth about what her marriage had become. Instead, she deleted the message and powered off her phone. Thomas didn't like her texting during breakfast. Thomas didn't like a lot of things. I have that conference in Boston next month, he said without looking up from the paper. You'll need to get my suits dry cleaned. Both the navy and the charcoal. And pack my good cufflinks. Okay, Naomi said. I'll be late tonight. Meeting with clients. Okay. She knew about Brielle. The 26-year-old administrative assistant at his accounting firm with the honey-colored hair and the graduate degree she wore like a badge. Naomi had seen the emails 3 months ago when Thomas left his laptop open. Long conversations that started professional and slid into personal territory. Inside jokes. Lunch plans. Can't stop thinking about our conversation yesterday. She'd memorized every word before closing the laptop and going to the bathroom to vomit. That night, she'd lain next to Thomas in bed and realized she had 2 choices. She could confront him, cry, beg him to stop, and watch him deny it or blame her or both. Watch their marriage crack apart in loud, messy pieces while she stood there with nothing. No money of her own. No job after he'd convinced her to quit to focus on the home. No leverage. Or she could be smart, strategic, patient. Naomi had chosen patience. Thomas finished his breakfast and pushed back from the table. He picked up his briefcase, checked his watch, and headed for the door without another word. No goodbye. No kiss. He'd stopped pretending years ago. The front door closed. The lock clicked. His car started in the driveway. Naomi sat alone at the table, staring at his empty plate. Then she picked up her phone, powered it back on, and made the call she'd been planning for the last 6 months. Foster and Associates, the receptionist answered. How may I help you? This is Naomi Edwards, she said quietly, her voice gaining strength with each word. I have an appointment with Diane Foster at 9 o'clock. I need to confirm I'm still coming. Yes, Mrs. Edwards. We have you down. Miss Foster is looking forward to meeting with you. Naomi ended the call and looked at the breakfast dishes. The routine that had kept her safe was about to end. The performance was almost over. She touched the bruise on her face one more time. This would be the last one. The last morning she would wake up afraid. The last breakfast she would serve to a man who saw her as property instead of a person. Thomas thought last night's violence had put her back in her place. He thought the silent breakfast meant submission. He had no idea that silence could be a weapon sharper than any he'd ever used against her. He didn't know that while he'd been sleeping, she'd been planning. That while he read his newspaper, she'd been counting down the hours until freedom. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window, catching the edge of his coffee mug. Naomi stood up, cleared the table, and began washing the dishes with careful precision. Everything had to look normal. Everything had to seem routine. Because tonight, when Thomas came home late from his meeting with Brielle, he would find an empty house and a signed set of divorce papers on the kitchen table where his breakfast had been that morning. And by then, Naomi would be somewhere he could never hurt her again. The hot water ran over Naomi's hands as she scrubbed Thomas's coffee mug. Outside the window, his black sedan pulled out of the driveway and disappeared down Oak Street. She counted to 60, then dried her hands and walked upstairs. Their bedroom looked like a magazine spread. Cream-colored walls, perfectly made bed with decorative pillows arranged just so, matching nightstands with identical lamps. Thomas insisted on symmetry. Order. Control extended to every corner of their lives, including which side of the closet held which clothes and how the towels had to be folded in thirds. Naomi sat on the edge of the bed and allowed herself 5 minutes to shake. 5 minutes to let the fear and exhaustion roll through her body. 5 minutes to be the terrified woman she actually was instead of the calm, composed one she'd pretended to be during breakfast. Then she stood up, walked to the mirror, and took photos of her face from 3 angles. The bruise on her jaw photographed darker than it looked in person. The swelling around her eye had worsened. She saved the images to a hidden folder on her phone labeled Recipes, and sent copies to the secure cloud account she'd set up using Rita's Wi-Fi months ago. Documentation. Evidence. Insurance. She pulled out the small notebook she kept tucked behind her tampons in the bathroom cabinet. Thomas never looked there. Too personal, too feminine, too beneath his notice. The notebook contained 6 months of entries, each one dated and detailed. January 11th morning, she wrote in careful handwriting. Bruised to left jaw and eye from 1/10th incident. Cause, question bank withdrawal. Amount, $3,000 unaccounted for. Verbal abuse, called me stupid, controlling, ungrateful. Physical, shove against counter, grab to face, twist of arm. She closed the notebook and returned it to its hiding place. Her phone buzzed again. Rita, persistent as always. Naomi, I'm worried. Please just let me know you're alive. This time, Naomi typed back. I'm okay. Can't talk now. Trust me. The reply came instantly. Do you need me to come over? No. I have appointments. I'll call you later. I promise. You better. I love you. Love you too. Naomi checked the time. 7:30. She had 90 minutes before her meeting with Diane Foster, the attorney she'd consulted twice before, paying in cash she'd skimmed from grocery money over months. Diane specialized in difficult divorces, high-conflict cases, domestic situations that required strategy and discretion. She walked to the closet and selected a long-sleeved blue shirt that covered her arms and a pair of dark jeans. She applied concealer to her face, working carefully around the swelling. The bruise still showed, but softer. At the meeting, she'd remove the makeup. Diane needed to see everything. Downstairs, she made herself a piece of toast and forced herself to eat it. Her stomach protested, but she needed strength. The morning stretched ahead like a minefield, each step calculated and crucial. At 8:15, she grabbed her purse and the manila folder hidden in the back of the hall closet behind the winter coats. Inside the folder, printed emails between Thomas and Brielle, bank statements showing the pattern of unexplained withdrawals, photos of previous bruises, recordings of arguments she'd captured on her phone, and a timeline of their marriage's descent from difficult to dangerous. She'd become an archivist of her own suffering. It felt clinical, necessary. The drive to Diane's office took 20 minutes through morning traffic. Naomi kept her hands steady on the wheel, her eyes on the road. Every few blocks she checked the rearview mirror. Thomas had tracked her phone once 2 years ago, when he'd accused her of lying about where she'd been. She'd learned to be careful. This phone was new, purchased with cash, registered under Rita's name. Thomas only had the number to her old phone, which currently sat in a drawer at home, powered off. The law office occupied the 3rd floor of a brick building downtown. Naomi took the elevator up, signed in with the receptionist, and sat in the waiting area. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Part of her still couldn't believe she was here. Part of her wanted to run back home and pretend this morning had never happened. But then she touched the bruise on her jaw and remembered. Mrs. Edwards? Diane Foster appeared in the doorway. Mid-40s, sharp gray suit, kind eyes behind stylish glasses. Come on back. Naomi followed her into a corner office with windows overlooking the street. Diane gestured to a chair across from her desk. How are you holding up? Diane asked, her voice gentle. Naomi removed the concealer with a makeup wipe, revealing the full extent of the bruising. This happened last night. Diane's expression hardened. She pulled out her phone. I need to photograph this. Is that okay? Naomi nodded. The camera clicked several times. What triggered it? Diane asked, making notes on a legal pad. I asked about money he'd withdrawn from our joint account. $3,000 I didn't know about. And before this incident, when was the last time he hurt you physically? 3 weeks ago. He grabbed my arm during an argument about dinner. Left bruises. I have photos. Good. Diane leaned forward. Naomi, I want you to understand something. What you're experiencing is domestic violence. It's not your fault. It's not because you asked the wrong question or cooked dinner wrong or any other reason he might give. This is about power and control. Naomi's throat tightened. Hearing someone say it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I know. Tell me about your situation. Financial, logistical. Do you have somewhere safe to go? My sister Rita. She's been helping me. I've been saving money, small amounts, whenever I could. I have about $4,000 in an account he doesn't know about. That's excellent. Most women in your situation have nothing. Diane pulled out several documents. We talked before about your options. Today, I need to know if you're ready to move forward. Naomi thought about that morning. The eggs. The silence. The casual way Thomas had told her to put ice on the bruise he'd caused. She thought about Brielle and the emails. About 9 years of slowly disappearing into someone else's idea of who she should be. I'm ready, she said. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. Diane spread papers across her desk. First, we file for divorce. Irreconcilable differences with documentation of abuse. Second, we get a restraining order. Emergency protective order first, then we'll petition for a longer-term one. Third, we secure your assets. You said you have a joint bank account. Yes. About $15,000 in it. Thomas controls it, but my name is on it too. We can legally withdraw your half before he knows what's happening. Timing is everything. Once he's served with papers, he'll try to drain accounts, hide assets, whatever he can do. We move first. Naomi's hands trembled in her lap. This was really happening. After years of afraid and small and trapped, she was about to step into the light. I rented an apartment, she said. Under my maiden name, Bennett. It's across town. He doesn't know about it. Diane smiled. You've been planning this. For 6 months. Since I found out about the affair. Smart. Most people confront immediately and lose their advantage. You did the hard thing. You waited. Diane pulled out more forms. I need you to sign these. Authorization for me to represent you. Filing papers for divorce. Application for protective order. Everything we discussed. Naomi read through each document carefully. Her hands shook as she signed her name, but each signature felt like taking back a piece of herself. Naomi Bennett Edwards, soon to be just Naomi Bennett again. The name she'd had before Thomas. Before the wedding. Before she'd agreed to love, honor, and obey a man who interpreted those vows as permission to own her. When will he be served? Naomi asked. I'll have process servers deliver the papers to his office tomorrow morning. Public location, witnesses around. Safer that way. Diane made more notes. In the meantime, you need to get your important documents. Birth certificate, social security card, passport, any sentimental items you can't replace. Can you do that today? Yes. He's at work until at least 6. Get in and out fast. Take your sister with you. I don't want you there alone. Diane looked at her seriously. Naomi, the most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim is when they leave. I need you to be extremely careful. I will be. Don't tell anyone where you're staying. Not friends, not distant relatives, no one who might accidentally mention it to him. Change your passwords. Check your car for tracking devices. Vary your routes. Stay in public places. Naomi absorbed each instruction. The reality of her situation settled over her shoulders like a heavy coat. She'd thought the hardest part would be deciding to leave. Now she understood that leaving was just the beginning. One more thing, Diane said. His affair. You have proof? Naomi pulled out her folder and handed over the printed emails. Diane skimmed through them, her expression unchanging. These are good. They establish infidelity, which supports your case for cause. Does he know you have these? No. Perfect. Let's keep it that way. Diane filed the papers neatly. Any questions? 1,000 questions crowded Naomi's mind. How long would this take? Would she be safe? What if Thomas convinced everyone she was lying? What if the judge didn't believe her? What if she couldn't survive on her own after 9 years of having every decision made for her? But she asked the only question that really mattered. Will I be free of him? Diane's smile was fierce. Yes, I promise you that. It won't be easy and it won't be quick, but yes, you will be free. Naomi left the office at 10:30 with a folder full of documents and a plan. She drove to Rita's apartment first, pulling into the visitor parking spot and texting her sister to come down. Rita appeared 2 minutes later, jogging across the parking lot in yoga pants and an oversized sweater. She yanked open the passenger door and gasped when she saw Naomi's face. Oh my God. Naomi. I need your help, Naomi said, her voice cracking for the first time that day. I'm leaving him. Rita's eyes filled with tears. Thank God. I've been waiting for you to say that for 3 years. She reached across and grabbed Naomi's hand. What do you need? Help me pack. I need to get my stuff out of the house before he gets home. Right now. Right now. They drove back to the house together, Rita following in her own car. Naomi parked in the garage and they went inside through the kitchen door. The breakfast dishes sat clean in the drainer. The table was empty. Everything looked exactly as she'd left it. Rita looked around with hard eyes. I always hated this place. Too perfect. Like a museum instead of a home. That's exactly what it was, Naomi said. A museum to his ego. They worked quickly. Naomi grabbed her birth certificate and social security card from the file cabinet. Her passport from the desk drawer. Photo albums from the hall closet, the ones with pictures of her family before the marriage. Her grandmother's ring, which she'd hidden in a jewelry box after Thomas had suggested selling it. Clothes from her side of the closet. Toiletries. Books. Rita carried boxes to the cars. What about furniture? Dishes? I don't want any of it, Naomi said. I want to start completely new. Good. He can choke on all of it. By 2 o'clock, they'd loaded both cars with everything Naomi couldn't replace. She took one last walk through the house, this place that had been her prison for years. The cream walls seemed to press in on her. The perfect symmetry felt suffocating. She left her wedding ring on the kitchen table next to a handwritten note. Just 3 words, I am done. Then she walked out, locked the door with the key she'd soon mail back to Diane's office, and drove away without looking back. At her new apartment, Rita helped her unload boxes. The place was small, just 1 bedroom, but the walls were painted a warm yellow and sunlight poured through the windows. Naomi's furniture from the storage unit she'd been renting for 2 months fit perfectly. I can't believe you planned all of this, Rita said, stacking boxes in the bedroom. I'm so proud of you. Naomi sank onto her new couch, a bright red sectional she'd bought on clearance. Nothing like the stiff, beige furniture Thomas had insisted on. She pulled a throw pillow into her lap and held it tight. I'm terrified, she admitted. Rita sat beside her. I know, but you're also free. Or you will be soon. He's going to be so angry. Let him be angry somewhere far away from you. That's what restraining orders are for. Rita squeezed her shoulder. You're staying with me tonight though. And tomorrow night. Until the restraining order goes through, you're not staying anywhere alone. Naomi nodded. The adrenaline that had carried her through the day was starting to fade, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Her face hurt. Her ribs ached. But underneath the pain was something else. Something she hadn't felt in years. Oh, Rita, she said quietly. Thank you for not giving up on me. Never, Rita said fiercely. You're my sister. I was just waiting for you to be ready to save yourself. And you did. You're the bravest person I know. Naomi wasn't sure about brave. Desperate maybe. Pushed to the edge. But as she looked around her new apartment with its yellow walls and red couch and windows full of light, she thought maybe Rita was right. Maybe this was what bravery looked like. Not a single moment of courage, but 1,000 small decisions that added up to freedom. Tomorrow, Thomas would be served with divorce papers at his office. Tomorrow, her new life would officially begin. But today, right now, she was already free. She touched the bruise on her jaw one more time, then let her hand fall away. She would heal. The bruises would fade. And Thomas would become nothing more than a mistake she'd learned from, a chapter that had closed. The breakfast she'd served that morning had been the last one. The performance was over. Naomi Bennett was taking back her life, one careful step at a time. 6 months earlier, before the bruises became regular, before the fear became routine, Naomi had found the emails. It was a Tuesday afternoon in July, humid and thick with summer heat. Thomas had left his laptop open on the kitchen counter while he showered upstairs, something he never did. Usually he closed it carefully, powered it down, and carried it with him everywhere like a briefcase full of secrets. Naomi had walked past it 3 times, carrying laundry, wiping counters, doing the invisible work that filled her days. On the 4th pass she stopped. The screen glowed with his email inbox. She could see the preview of the most recent message from someone named Brielle Collins. Yesterday was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. Her hand had moved before her brain fully processed what she was doing. One click on the email. Then another. Then scrolling back through months of correspondence that started professional and polite and gradually shifted into something else entirely. You're so easy to talk to. My husband never listens like you do. That restaurant you suggested was perfect. I keep thinking about our conversation. And then 2 months into their email exchange, I know we shouldn't, but I can't help how I feel. Naomi had read every word while the shower ran upstairs. She'd memorized the timeline. March, when Brielle started at the accounting firm. April, when the emails began. May, when they started having lunch together. June, when the tone shifted from friendly to intimate. July, when they made plans to meet at a hotel. The shower shut off. Naomi closed the laptop and walked calmly to the living room. She sat on the couch and stared at the wall while her heart hammered in her chest and her thoughts spun in circles. She could confront him. Scream, cry, demand explanations. She'd watched enough television to know how those scenes played out. He would deny it. He would say she was imagining things, that the emails were innocent, that she was being crazy. Or he'd turn it back on her. Find ways to make it her fault. Tell her she'd driven him to it by being cold, distant, not enough. And then what? She had no money of her own. No job. No car titled in her name. No credit cards. Thomas handled all the finances. Thomas made all the decisions. If she confronted him and he decided to leave, or worse, if she demanded he leave, she'd be the one with nothing. He'd already shown her what he did when he felt challenged. She'd had enough bruises to know. So instead, Naomi had taken out her phone and photographed every email. She created a secret cloud account using an old email address from college. She uploaded everything and logged out. Then she'd Googled divorce attorney domestic violence and written down the name at the top of the search results. Diane Foster. That night, when Thomas came to bed, she'd lain beside him and pretended to sleep. Her mind had raced with plans and possibilities. By morning, she'd made her decision. She wouldn't confront him. She would outmaneuver him. The first call to Diane's office had been terrifying. Naomi had driven to a coffee shop across town, ordered something she didn't drink, and sat in her car in the parking lot with shaking hands. Foster and Associates. How may I help you? I need to speak with someone about a divorce. Her voice had come out as a whisper. A difficult one. The initial consultation cost $200. Naomi had been skimming $20 here and there from grocery money for months, hiding it in a box in Rita's garage. She had $300 saved. She paid in cash. Diane's office had been nothing like she expected. Not cold and corporate, but warm and comfortable. Diane herself had been professional but kind, patient with Naomi's fumbling explanations. Tell me about your marriage, Diane had said. And Naomi had. 9 years summarized in 30 minutes. The whirlwind courtship when she was 23 and he was 28. How charming he'd been. How attentive. The wedding that felt like a fairy tale. The first year when things were good, or at least seemed good in memory. The slow shift. The way he started making all the decisions. The comments about her weight, her clothes, her friends. The isolation that happened so gradually she didn't notice until it was complete. When did he first hit you? Diane had asked gently. He doesn't hit me, Naomi had said automatically. Sometimes he pushes me. Or grabs my arm. Or, that's hitting, Naomi. Any unwanted physical contact is assault. The word had landed like a punch. Assault. Her husband was assaulting her. I need to leave him, she'd said. But I don't have anything. No money, no job. I quit working when we got married. He said he made enough for both of us. He said I should focus on making a home. Unfortunately, your situation is common. Diane had pulled out a legal pad. Here's what you need to know. Texas is a community property state. That means assets acquired during marriage belong equally to both spouses. The house, the cars, the bank accounts. You have as much right to those assets as he does. But his name is on everything. Doesn't matter. You're entitled to half. And given the abuse, we can argue for more. Diane had leaned forward. But here's the problem. The moment you file for divorce, he'll know. He'll try to hide assets, drain accounts, whatever he can do. We need to be strategic. What does that mean? It means you document everything. Every bruise, every threat, every incident. You gather financial information. You prepare an exit strategy. And when you're ready, when you have everything in place, then we move fast and we move hard. Naomi had left that first meeting with a list of instructions. Document abuse. Photograph injuries. Record arguments if safe to do. Open a bank account in her own name at a different bank. Start putting away money. Find a safe place to stay when the time came. List all assets and debts. Look for evidence of hidden money or affairs. Over the next 6 months, Naomi became an architect of her own freedom. She kept the notebook hidden in the bathroom. She photographed every bruise, every mark. She recorded arguments on her phone when Thomas got loud. She found the emails with Brielle and documented those too. She got a job secretly. Just 15 hours a week at a nonprofit organization that provided support services for families in crisis. The irony wasn't lost on her. She told Thomas she joined a book club that met twice a week. He barely listened to the lie. He was too busy with his own. The paycheck, small as it was, went into the secret account. Every dollar felt like a brick in the foundation she was building under his nose. By October, she had $2,000 saved. By December, $4,000. She'd never felt richer in her life. She'd met with Diane 3 more times, updating her, refining the plan. Diane connected her with a women's shelter that helped her find the apartment. She learned about restraining orders and protective orders and how to document everything for court. The judge needs to see a pattern, Diane had explained. One incident he can claim was an accident or that you're exaggerating. Multiple incidents over time with documentation, that's harder to deny. So Naomi documented. She became a historian of her own pain. Every time Thomas raised his voice, she noted it. Every time he grabbed her roughly, she photographed the marks. Every time he withdrew money without explanation, she recorded the transaction. She told Rita in November. They'd met for lunch, a rare outing Thomas had approved because it was her sister's birthday. Naomi had worn long sleeves despite the warm day. Halfway through the meal, Rita had reached across and pushed up her sleeve, revealing the finger-shaped bruises on her forearm. How long? Rita had asked, her voice tight. A while. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed. Because I thought I could fix it. Because I didn't know how to leave. Naomi had pulled her sleeve back down. But I'm leaving. I'm planning it. I just need time. Rita had wanted to call the police right then. Wanted Naomi to pack up and move in with her immediately. But Naomi had explained the strategy. The need for documentation. The financial reality. Rita had hated it but agreed to help. She gave Naomi a spare key to her apartment. Let her store boxes in the spare bedroom. Helped her open the bank account using Rita's address. Became her alibi and her lifeline. By Christmas, Naomi had almost everything in place. By New Year's, she'd signed the lease on her apartment. By January 10th, she was ready. And then Thomas had shoved her into the counter, his face twisted with rage over a simple question about money. He'd grabbed her jaw, his fingers digging in, and called her ungrateful. Told her she should be happy he let her live in his house, spend his money, breathe his air. That had been the final piece of evidence she needed. The final push to move from planning to action. She'd served him breakfast the next morning with a bruised face and a clear conscience. The eggs had been perfect. The coffee had been hot. And every second of that quiet, careful performance had been strategy. Letting him think he'd won. Letting him believe she was broken and compliant. while really she was counting down the hours until she walked out of his life forever. That morning, sitting in Diane's office with her bruised face and her folder of evidence, Naomi had felt something she hadn't felt in years. Power. Not over him, but over herself. Over her own life. The power to choose freedom over familiarity. Safety over the devil she knew. "I'm ready," she told Diane. And she was. 6 months of careful planning had led to this moment. The architect had drawn up the blueprints. The foundation had been laid. Now it was time to build the structure that would carry her into a new life. As she signed the divorce papers, Naomi thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago. Too scared to leave. Too ashamed to ask for help. Believing somehow that she deserved the bruises, that she'd earned the anger, that if she just tried harder to be perfect then maybe he would stop. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger. Someone who knew her own worth. Someone who understood that love wasn't supposed to hurt and that marriage wasn't supposed to be a prison sentence. Thomas thought the breakfast had been an apology. He thought her silence meant surrender. He had no idea that silence had been her shield while she sharpened her sword. By the time he figured out what she'd been planning, it would be too late. The papers would be filed. The restraining order would be in place. The bank account would be secured. And Naomi would be somewhere safe, somewhere he couldn't touch her, rebuilding herself piece by careful piece. The architect of freedom. That's what she'd become. Not by accident but by design. Not through luck, but through patience and planning and the quiet, determined courage of a woman who refused to disappear. Naomi woke up on Rita's couch at 6 a.m. on January 12th, the day Thomas would be served with divorce papers. Sunlight crept through the blinds in thin stripes, painting the room in shades of gold and shadow. Her face still ached, but the swelling around her eye had gone down enough that she could see clearly. Rita emerged from her bedroom in pajamas and a robe, hair wrapped in a silk scarf. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," Naomi admitted. "Too much adrenaline." "Want coffee?" "I make it strong enough to wake the dead." "That sounds perfect." They sat at Rita's small kitchen table, hands wrapped around mugs of coffee that tasted like determination. Rita worked as a nurse at the county hospital, tough and practical in ways that Naomi had always envied. 8 years younger but somehow older in all the ways that mattered. "What time is the process server going to his office?" Rita asked. Diane said around 9:30. "Right after the morning meeting, public enough that he can't cause a scene." Rita nodded approvingly. "Smart. Let everyone see what kind of man he really is." "Part of me feels guilty," Naomi said quietly. "Embarrassing him at work." "Stop that." Rita's voice was sharp. "He embarrassed himself when he decided to cheat and hit you. This is just consequences. Don't you dare feel guilty for protecting yourself." Naomi knew her sister was right, but the conditioning went deep. 9 years of being told she was too sensitive, too emotional, too much. 9 years of apologizing for existing. Those patterns didn't disappear overnight. Her phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "Process server confirmed for 9:30 a.m. Bank opens at 8 a.m. I'll meet you there at 8:15. Naomi's stomach flipped. The bank. She'd been avoiding thinking too hard about that part of the plan. Walking into their joint bank and withdrawing half the money felt like theft, even though Diane had explained multiple times that it was legally hers. "What's wrong?" Rita asked, reading her expression. "The bank. I have to go withdraw money from our joint account." "Your joint account. Your money too." "I know. It just feels wrong." Rita reached across the table and gripped her hand. "Listen to me. That man has been stealing from you for 9 years. He stole your confidence, your independence, your sense of safety. He stole who you used to be and replaced her with someone too scared to speak. Taking half of a bank account isn't theft. It's recovery." Naomi squeezed her sister's hand back. "When did you get so wise?" "Nursing school. We had a whole class on domestic violence. I kept thinking about you the entire time." Rita's eyes filled with tears. "I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how to help you. You helped by being here. By not giving up on me." They finished their coffee and Naomi went to shower. She dressed carefully in dark jeans and a green blouse, clothes that were hers, not chosen by Thomas. She applied minimal makeup, leaving the bruise on her jaw visible. Diane had been clear. Document everything, hide nothing. At 8:10 she drove to the bank downtown, a different branch from the one they usually used. Diane was already there, waiting in the parking lot in a silver SUV. She got out when she saw Naomi carrying a leather briefcase. "Ready?" Diane asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." Inside, the bank was quiet and sterile. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A teller in a blue vest smiled professionally as they approached. "Good morning. How can I help you?" Diane spoke first. "My client needs to withdraw funds from a joint account. We have all the necessary documentation." She spread papers across the counter. The account information. Naomi's ID. A letter on law firm letterhead explaining the situation and asserting Naomi's legal right to the funds. The teller's smile faltered as she read. "Let me get the manager." They waited while a middle-aged man in a suit emerged from an office. He read through everything twice, his expression carefully neutral. "Mrs. Edwards, I understand you're going through a difficult situation," he said. "However, withdrawing funds from a joint account can be complicated. Have you discussed this with your husband?" "No," Naomi said. "And I'm not going to." Diane stepped in smoothly. "As the documentation shows, my client has every legal right to access these funds. The account is jointly held. She's not required to consult with the other account holder before making withdrawals." The manager shifted uncomfortably. "Of course. I just want to make sure everyone understands the implications." "We understand perfectly," Diane said with steel in her voice. "Please process the withdrawal." It took 20 minutes of forms and signatures and computer entries. The manager tried twice more to suggest they wait, consult with Thomas, consider the consequences. Each time, Diane shut him down with calm, professional insistence. Finally, he printed out a withdrawal slip. "The balance is $15,418. You want to withdraw half?" "Yes," Naomi said. He processed the transaction and counted out $7,700 bills, 9 20s and a 10. The cash felt heavy in Naomi's hands, substantial and real. She tucked it into an envelope Diane provided and slipped it into her purse. "Thank you," she told the manager. Outside in the parking lot, her hands started shaking. Diane noticed. "That was the hard part," she said. "You did great. Why do I feel like a criminal? Because you've been conditioned to feel guilty for taking up space, for having needs, for asserting your rights." Diane's voice was kind but firm. "That money is yours. You earned it by surviving 9 years with a man who hurt you. Don't let his voice in your head tell you otherwise." Naomi took a deep breath. "What happens next?" "Now you go back to Rita's and you wait. The process server will deliver the papers to Thomas's office in about an hour. Once he's served, the clock starts. He'll have 30 days to respond to the divorce petition." "What about the restraining order?" "I'm filing for an emergency protective order this morning. Given the documentation and the photos from yesterday, I'm confident we'll get it. Probably by this afternoon. That means he can't come within 500 feet of you. Can't call, text, or contact you in any way." Relief washed over Naomi so intensely she felt dizzy. "He won't be able to find me?" "Not legally. And if he tries, he'll be arrested." Diane put a hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now. Or you will be very soon." Naomi drove back to Rita's apartment, her purse full of cash, her future suddenly real. She kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see Thomas's car following her. But the streets were full of strangers going about their ordinary days. Nobody watching. Nobody following. At Rita's, she deposited the cash into her secret account using the mobile app. The balance jumped to over $11,000. More money than she'd had access to in her entire adult life. Money that was hers, under her control, untouchable by Thomas. She sat on the couch and stared at her phone, watching the time. 9:15. 9:20. 9:30. Somewhere across town, a process server was walking into Thomas's accounting firm. Asking for him by name. Handing him an envelope. Saying the words that would officially end their marriage. Naomi imagined his face. The confusion, then the anger. The realization. She imagined him opening the envelope in front of his colleagues, reading the petition for divorce, seeing the accusations of abuse laid out in legal language. She imagined his humiliation. And she felt nothing but relief. Her phone rang at 9:45. Rita calling from the hospital. Did it happen? Should be happening right now. How are you feeling? Scared. Relieved. Like I might throw up. That's normal. You want me to come home? I can take a sick day. No, I'm okay. I just need to sit with this. Call me if you need anything. Anything at all. I'll have my phone. Naomi spent the rest of the morning organizing her new apartment. She hung curtains in the bedroom. She unpacked boxes of books and arranged them on shelves. She put her grandmother's ring in a small jewelry box on her dresser, where she could see it every morning. Each small act of building a life felt like rebellion. Thomas had chosen everything in their house, from the paint colors to the brand of soap. Now Naomi chose. She picked the red couch because it made her happy. She hung colorful art prints because they brightened the walls. She bought plants, something Thomas never allowed because he said they made the house look messy. At 1:30, Diane called. It's done. He was served. Process server said he went pale, then red. Tried to argue but couldn't because he was at work. He left the office right after. Where did he go? I don't know, and frankly we don't care. The restraining order came through. Emergency protective orders signed by Judge Morrison. Thomas is legally forbidden from contacting you or coming near you. Violation means immediate arrest. Naomi closed her eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We're just getting started. He'll respond to the divorce petition, probably with his own lawyer. There will be depositions, negotiations. It could take months. I don't care how long it takes. As long as I never have to go back. You won't, Diane promised. I'll make sure of it. After hanging up, Naomi walked through her apartment slowly, touching walls, feeling the space around her. This was hers. This small, bright, safe place was hers. No one could take it from her. No one could hurt her here. She made herself lunch, a simple salad with grilled chicken. She ate it sitting at her small table, looking out the window at the street below. People walked by with dogs and strollers. Cars passed. Life continued, ordinary and unremarkable. She was part of that now. Part of the regular world where women didn't flinch when doors opened. Where bruises were accidents, not routine. Where silence was peaceful instead of strategic. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Her heart stopped. You're going to regret this. Thomas. He'd found her new number somehow. The restraining order was barely in effect and he was already violating it. Naomi screenshotted the message and forwarded it to Diane. The response came back immediately. Document everything. Do not respond. I'm calling the police to file a report. Another text from Thomas. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me. Screenshot. Forward. Do not respond. You'll never make it on your own. You need me. Screenshot. Forward. Block number. Her hands shook but her mind stayed clear. This was exactly what Diane had warned her about. The attempts to regain control. The messages designed to provoke a response, to pull her back into interaction. But Naomi had done her homework. She knew the patterns. She knew that engaging would only make it worse. So she blocked the number and called Rita. He's texting me. Threatening messages. Did you respond? No. I documented and sent everything to Diane. Good girl. That's evidence of restraining order violation. He's digging his own grave. I'm scared he'll show up here. Can you see the door from where you are? Naomi moved to the living room window. She had a clear view of the building entrance. Yes. Keep it locked. Keep your phone charged. If you see him, call 911 immediately. Don't hesitate, don't give him chances. Just call. Okay. I'm coming home after my shift. I'll bring dinner. We'll have a girls' night and watch terrible movies and not think about him at all. Naomi smiled despite her fear. That sounds perfect. The afternoon stretched long. Every car that pulled into the parking lot made her heart race. Every footstep in the hallway made her freeze. But Thomas didn't come. Maybe Diane had already contacted him about the texts. Maybe his lawyer had warned him. Maybe he was just regrouping, planning his next move. By evening, Naomi felt exhausted from the adrenaline, from the constant vigilance. Rita came home with Thai food and chocolate ice cream and a stack of romantic comedies from the early 2000s. They ate on the couch, laughing at movies they'd seen a dozen times. It felt normal. Simple. Safe. This is nice, Naomi said around midnight, half asleep on the couch with a blanket over her legs. What is this? Feeling like myself again. Or like who I used to be. I'd forgotten what that felt like. Rita squeezed her shoulder. You're going to be okay. Better than okay. You're going to be amazing. Naomi wanted to believe that. She wanted to imagine a future where the fear faded, where she rebuilt herself into someone whole and confident. Where Thomas became nothing more than a footnote in her story instead of the main character. I hope so, she whispered. I know so, Rita said fiercely. Because you're the strongest person I know. You just spent 6 months planning your escape from an abusive marriage. You documented everything, saved money, found a lawyer, and executed a perfect exit strategy. That's not lucky. That's strong. That's brave. That's brilliant. The words settled into Naomi's chest like seeds. Maybe Rita was right. Maybe she was stronger than she thought. Maybe the woman who served breakfast with a bruised face and a secret plan was someone worth being proud of. That night, sleeping in Rita's spare bedroom, Naomi dreamed of yellow walls and red couches and windows full of light. She dreamed of a life without fear, without flinching, without constantly calculating the safest way to exist. And when she woke up the next morning for the first time in 9 years, she woke up free. Thomas Edwards sat in his black sedan in the parking lot of his office building, gripping the steering wheel hard enough to make his knuckles white. The manila envelope lay on the passenger seat like a bomb. He'd read through the papers 3 times, each reading making the words feel less real and more surreal. Petition for divorce. Grounds: insupportable marriage with allegations of physical abuse and infidelity. Petitioner: Naomi Bennett Edwards. Respondent: Thomas Edwards. His wife had filed for divorce. His obedient, quiet, manageable wife had walked out and filed for divorce. The same woman who'd served him breakfast yesterday morning with a bruised face and said nothing. Who'd sat across from him at the table, silent and compliant, exactly as she should be. She'd played him. The realization made his stomach turn. That breakfast had been an act. The silence had been strategy. While he'd been reading his newspaper, congratulating himself on putting her back in line, she'd been planning her exit. The process server's face flashed through his mind. Showing up at his office during the Friday morning meeting. Walking right into the conference room and asking for him by name in front of Johnson, Peters, and the new partner. Handing him the envelope. Saying loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Thomas Edwards, you've been served." The room had gone silent. 12 faces turning toward him. Johnson's eyebrows raising. Peters making that little coughing sound he always made when things got awkward. The new partner, whose name Thomas couldn't remember, looking confused. "Excuse me," Thomas had said, taking the envelope with hands that didn't shake because he wouldn't let them. "I need to handle this." He'd walked out of the conference room with his head high, feeling their eyes on his back. Made it to his office. Closed the door. Opened the envelope. And read words that made his carefully constructed world tilt sideways. Physical abuse in black and white. Dates and times. Descriptions of incidents he barely remembered. The thing with the counter 2 nights ago. Something about grabbing her arm. 3 weeks ago. Other things from months back that he'd forgotten entirely because they hadn't been important. And underneath that, infidelity. Printed emails between him and Brielle. How had Naomi gotten those? He'd been careful. He'd deleted everything or thought he had. But there they were, his own words used against him like weapons. Thomas had left work immediately. Told his secretary he had a family emergency, which technically wasn't a lie. Drove home to an empty house. The silence had hit him first. No Naomi in the kitchen. No smell of cooking. No sound of her moving through rooms, existing in the background of his life like furniture. Then he'd seen his wedding ring on the kitchen table. Just the ring sitting there like an accusation. Next to it, a note in her handwriting, "I am done." 3 words. That was all she'd left him. 3 words in an empty house. Thomas had gone through every room. The closet on her side was empty, just bare hangers. Her dresser drawers were cleaned out. The bathroom counter where her toiletries used to sit was bare. She'd taken the photo albums from the hall closet. Her grandmother's ring from the jewelry box. All her clothes, her shoes, her books. She'd moved out. Completely. While he'd been at work, probably that very day, she'd come back and erased herself from his life. He'd called her cell phone. Straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same thing. Sent a text. "Naomi, we need to talk about this. Come home." No response. He'd called Rita. That had been a mistake. "Don't call this number again," Rita had said, her voice cold as ice. "And don't come to my house. I have cameras. If you show up, I'm calling the police. I just need to talk to my wife. Your soon-to-be ex-wife. Who wants nothing to do with you. Leave her alone, Thomas." She'd hung up before he could respond. That's when panic had started to set in. Real panic crawling up his throat and squeezing. Naomi wasn't coming back. This wasn't a fight they could smooth over. This wasn't a rough patch. This was ending, final and complete. He'd driven to Rita's apartment building anyway, parked across the street, tried to see if Naomi's car was there. But Rita had meant what she said about cameras. He could see the Ring doorbell from the street, its blue light glowing. Any closer and he'd be recorded. Back home, he'd opened the divorce papers again and read more carefully. The restraining order wasn't there, but surely that was coming. The petition mentioned safety concerns and need for protection. Legal language for what was probably already filed. Thomas poured himself 3 fingers of scotch and sat in his perfect living room with the cream walls and beige furniture and tried to figure out where everything had gone wrong. The affair with Brielle had been, what? A distraction. Naomi had become so boring, so passive, so there. Brielle was young and exciting. She laughed at his jokes. She made him feel interesting again. Was that so terrible? And the other thing, the physical stuff, that was just, he'd been frustrated. Naomi pushed his buttons sometimes. Asked questions that implied she didn't trust him. Looked at him with those judgmental eyes. He never really hurt her. Not seriously. Just a push here, a grab there. Nothing that left permanent damage. Except apparently she'd been photographing it. Documenting it. Building a case against him like he was some kind of criminal. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Diane Foster, attorney for Naomi Edwards. You are hereby notified that an emergency protective order has been granted. You are prohibited from contacting Ms. Edwards directly or indirectly. Violation will result in immediate arrest. A copy of the order will be mailed to you. Thomas read it 3 times. A restraining order. She'd actually gotten a restraining order against him. His wife of 9 years had convinced the judge that he was dangerous enough to require a legal barrier. The rage hit him suddenly, hot and overwhelming. He grabbed his phone and typed out a message to Naomi's number. You're going to regret this. Sent. Immediately he knew it was stupid. But the anger felt good, felt righteous. She'd humiliated him. Blindsided him. Treated him like a villain when all he'd ever done was provide for her, give her a home, take care of everything. He sent another message. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me. Then another, you'll never make it on your own. You need me. He waited for responses that never came. The messages showed as delivered but not read. Had she blocked him? Probably. That would be just like her new attitude. Calculating. His phone rang. Unknown number again. He answered. Mr. Edwards, this is Diane Foster. I've been informed that you've contacted my client via text message despite being notified of the protective order. Those messages constitute harassment and violation of the court order. I'm obligated to report this to the police. I have a right to talk to my wife. You have no such right. And she's not your wife anymore or won't be soon. Any further contact will result in criminal charges. Do you understand? This is ridiculous. She's overreacting. I never hurt her. Mr. Edwards, I have photographic evidence and documentation that says otherwise. I suggest you retain your own attorney immediately. And I strongly suggest you stop contacting my client. The line went dead. Thomas sat there, phone in hand, the walls of his perfect house pressing in. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Naomi was his wife. Wives didn't just leave. They didn't file restraining orders and hire lawyers and disappear. He called his brother first. Got voicemail. Left a message explaining the situation, making it sound like Naomi had gone crazy, had some kind of breakdown. His brother would understand. His brother knew how women could be sometimes. Then he called Brielle. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice cautious. Thomas? I need to see you. Can we meet somewhere? Long pause. I don't think that's a good idea. Naomi left me. She filed for divorce. I know. Someone from your office called me. Asked if we'd been having an affair. I told them no. We need to get our story straight. This could blow up. There's no story, Thomas. We were just friends. That's all anyone needs to know. But the emails? Were professional. Friendly at most. I'm not getting involved in your divorce. Her voice was firm, final. I'm sorry you're going through this, but I can't help you. Brielle, please? Don't call me again. Okay. Just, good luck with everything. She hung up. Thomas stared at his phone, the pieces of his life scattering like a dropped puzzle. Naomi gone. His office knowing. Brielle distancing herself. The restraining order. The divorce petition. How had this happened? How had his quiet, obedient wife turned into this person who could dismantle his life with such precision? He thought about the breakfast 2 mornings ago. The eggs perfectly cooked. The coffee exactly right. Her sitting there with her bruised face, silent and still. He'd thought he'd won that fight. Thought the violence had put her back in her place. But she'd been planning even then. Maybe for weeks. Months. She'd served him breakfast and smiled with her swollen face and plotted his destruction. The realization made him feel sick and furious all at once. Thomas grabbed his laptop and Googled divorce lawyers. He needed someone good. Someone who could fight this, expose Naomi's lies, prove she was being vindictive and manipulative. He had rights too. Community property. The house was in his name. The cars. Everything. But as he scrolled through law firm websites, another thought crept in. What if she wasn't lying? What if the judge believed her? What if those photos and recordings and emails were enough to convince a court that he was abusive? He thought about his job, his reputation, his standing in the community, the church he and Naomi attended, where everyone thought they were the perfect couple. His parents who adored Naomi, who'd been so proud when he married her. This could ruin everything. Not just his marriage. Everything. Thomas closed the laptop and poured more scotch. The sun was setting, painting the living room in shades of orange that felt accusing. He sat in the silence of his empty house and felt the first real stirrings of fear. Naomi had the advantage. She'd moved first, documented everything, hidden her plans. By the time he'd realized what was happening, she was already gone. He'd underestimated her. For 9 years he'd seen her as manageable, controllable, small. And all that time she'd been someone else entirely. Someone smart enough to wait, patient enough to plan, strong enough to leave. The thought should have made him respect her. Instead, it made him angrier. Because if she'd been that person all along, then she'd been lying to him. Playing a role. Pretending to be someone she wasn't just to catch him off guard. Thomas fell asleep on the couch that night, the empty scotch glass on the table beside him, dreaming of breakfast and bruises and a woman who'd smiled while plotting his downfall. When he woke up in the morning, the house was still empty. And Naomi was still gone. Monday morning arrived with the weight of consequences. Thomas dressed for work in the dark, his house still empty and echoing. He'd spent the weekend calling lawyers, most of whom quoted fees that made his head spin. The one he finally hired, Robert Brennan, had been blunt about his chances. You've got allegations of abuse with documentation, photographic evidence, recorded arguments, proof of infidelity. This isn't a he said she said situation. She's got ammunition. But she's exaggerating, Thomas had insisted. I never seriously hurt her. Brennan had sighed. Doesn't matter how you see it. Matters how a judge sees it. And right now you look bad. Thomas parked in his usual spot at the accounting firm and walked through the lobby with his chin up. Professional. Composed. Like nothing was wrong. But the whispers started before he reached his office. Angela from HR was waiting at his desk. Mid-50s, gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, expression professionally neutral. Thomas, Mr. Harrison needs to see you in his office. His stomach dropped. Harrison was the managing partner. You didn't get called to his office unless something was seriously wrong. Now. Thomas followed her down the hallway, past cubicles where colleagues suddenly became very interested in their computer screens. The conference room where he'd been served on Friday still had the coffee cups sitting on the table, like time had stopped. Harrison's office was corner suite, windows overlooking downtown. He sat behind his massive desk, hands folded. His expression was not friendly. Sit down, Thomas. Thomas sat. Angela closed the door and stood beside it like a guard. I'll get straight to the point, Harrison said. We received notification this morning from your wife's attorney regarding a restraining order. Allegations of domestic violence and harassment. Those allegations are false. Nevertheless, they exist. And they've been brought to our attention. This firm has a zero-tolerance policy regarding violence and harassment, as you're well aware. Thomas felt the walls closing in. You're firing me? I'm placing you on administrative leave pending investigation. Paid leave? Harrison added, like that made it better. We need to review the situation, consult with legal, determine if this impacts your ability to work with clients. This is my personal life. It has nothing to do with my job. It has everything to do with your job when it becomes public knowledge. When clients ask questions. When it reflects on the firm's reputation. Harrison's voice was firm. I'm sorry, Thomas. This isn't personal. But until this matter is resolved, you can't be here. Angela handed him a folder. Your computer access has been suspended. Please collect personal items from your office. I'll escort you out. The walk back to his office felt like a death march. More whispers. More eyes. He grabbed his framed degree from the wall, a photo of his parents, his gym bag from under the desk. Stuffed everything into a cardboard box Angela provided. In the elevator down, she was silent. Professional. But he could feel her judgment like a physical weight. This isn't what it looks like, he said. Angela pressed the lobby button. It never is. Naomi is lying. Then I'm sure that will come out in court. Her tone suggested she didn't believe him. The security guard watched as he walked through the lobby with his box of belongings. Thomas kept his head up, but inside he was crumbling. 9 years at this firm. Partner track. Respect from colleagues. All of it evaporating because Naomi had decided to burn his life down. His phone rang as he reached his car. His mother. Thomas, what on earth is going on? I just got the strangest call from Naomi's sister. He closed his eyes. What did Rita say? She said Naomi left you. That there's a restraining order. She said things I don't want to repeat. His mother's voice was shaking. Please tell me this isn't true. It's complicated. Did you hit your wife? The question hung in the air like an executioner's blade. Thomas thought about lying, but what was the point? We had some arguments. Things got heated. But I never seriously hurt her. Silence. Then, in a voice he'd never heard from his mother before, you hit her. It wasn't like that. How many times? Mom? How many times did you put your hands on your wife? Thomas couldn't answer. The number felt both insignificant and damning. A push here. A grab there. Nothing serious. Nothing that mattered. Except it had mattered. Enough for photographs. Enough for a restraining order. Enough for his mother to sound like she didn't know him anymore. I'm so disappointed in you, she said quietly. Your father and I raised you better than this. Are you taking her side? There are no sides when it comes to hurting people you're supposed to love. There's just right and wrong. And what you did was wrong. She paused. Don't call here again until you figured out how to be the man we thought you were. She hung up. Thomas sat in his car in the parking lot, the box of his professional life beside him, and felt everything slipping through his fingers like sand. He called Brielle. She didn't answer. He tried again. Voicemail. Sent a text. Please just talk to me for 5 minutes. No response. He drove to her apartment just to see if she was home. Parked across the street and waited for an hour. No sign of her car. No lights in the windows. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Robert Brennan, your attorney. Stop contacting people involved in your case. That includes your wife, her family, and Brielle Collins. Every contact is potential evidence. Lay low and let me handle this. Thomas threw his phone onto the passenger seat and screamed. Actually screamed, alone in his car, all the rage and fear and humiliation pouring out in one long primal sound. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. He was the successful one. The one with the career and the nice house and the perfect life. Naomi had been the tag-along, the accessory, the wife who smiled and cooked and did what she was told. When had she become the powerful one? When had she learned to fight back? That evening, Thomas checked into a motel off the highway. He couldn't stand being in the empty house anymore, surrounded by evidence of Naomi's absence. The motel was cheap, the carpet stained, the TV only getting basic cable. But it felt appropriate somehow. This was what his life had become. Downgraded. Diminished. He lay on the bed and scrolled through his phone looking at old photos. Naomi smiling on their wedding day. Naomi at Christmas with his family. Naomi at a work party, standing beside him in a blue dress, his arm around her shoulders. In all the photos her smile looked real. But now he wondered, had she been pretending even then? Had she been waiting for the right moment to destroy him? Or had he destroyed something good and just not noticed until it was too late? The question made him uncomfortable. It implied responsibility. It suggested that maybe his version of events wasn't the only one. That maybe those bruises on her face weren't exaggerated. That maybe the fear in her eyes had been real. But accepting that would mean accepting that he was the villain in this story. And Thomas Edwards wasn't a villain. He was a good man who'd made some mistakes. Who'd been pushed too far. Who'd had a wife who didn't understand him and a girlfriend who was just there to listen. He fell asleep telling himself that story. But his dreams were full of breakfast tables and bruised faces and a woman who'd served eggs with perfect precision while planning his downfall. In the morning, he woke to an email from HR. Official notice of his administrative leave. Effective immediately. Return date to be determined. He checked the joint bank account on his phone and found the balance at $7,000. Half of what had been there last week. Naomi had taken her share. Of course she had. Thomas threw his phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor. The screen cracked but still glowed. He called Brennan. She took money from our account. Can she do that? It's a joint account. She has every right. Brennan sounded tired. Look, Thomas, you need to understand something. Your wife was smart about this. She documented everything. Planned carefully. Left when she had all her ducks in a row. That's not someone acting impulsively. That's someone who knew exactly what she was doing. So what do? You cooperate. You don't violate the restraining order. You don't contact her or her family or anyone connected to her. You gather financial documents for discovery. You show up to court dates. And you accept that this marriage is over. I don't want it to be over. Brennan sighed. What you want stopped mattering the moment you put your hands on her. Now it's about damage control. Keeping you out of jail. Making sure you get a fair property settlement. But the marriage? That's done. Thomas ended the call and stared at the cracked screen of his phone. The motel room felt smaller than before. Suffocating. He'd lost his wife. His job. His parents' respect. Brielle's attention. Everything he'd built over 37 years was crumbling because of one mistake. Or multiple mistakes. Or maybe not mistakes at all but choices that had consequences he'd never imagined. That afternoon he drove past the house. His house. Except it didn't feel like his anymore. The windows looked dark and empty. The grass needed mowing. The whole place had an abandoned feeling. He saw a for sale sign going up in the yard next door. The neighbors, the Mitchells, had lived there for 20 years. Mrs. Mitchell waved sometimes when Naomi was gardening. She'd probably heard everything by now. Thomas drove away quickly. 3 days later, his termination letter arrived. Not administrative leave. Actual termination. Due to conduct unbecoming of a professional representative of the firm. They didn't mention the abuse allegations specifically, but everyone knew. Brennan filed a response to the divorce petition. Standard language denying the allegations, requesting equitable division of property. It felt hollow. Like going through motions when the outcome was already decided. Thomas spent his days in the motel room watching bad television and ordering takeout. His phone stopped ringing. His friends, such as they were, had all heard by now. Nobody wanted to be associated with a guy accused of beating his wife. Brielle finally responded to his messages with a single text. Please stop contacting me. What we had wasn't real and you know it. I hope you get help. Help. Like he was sick. Like he was the problem. But late at night, when the television was off and the motel was quiet except for traffic on the highway, Thomas lay in bed and wondered. What if he was the problem? What if Naomi had been telling the truth all along? What if the bruises weren't exaggerated and the fear wasn't manufactured and the restraining order wasn't vindictive but necessary? The thoughts made him feel sick. But he couldn't push them away entirely. They lingered at the edges of his mind, whispering uncomfortable truths. He'd hit his wife. Multiple times. That was a fact, regardless of how he'd justified it in the moment. He'd cheated on her. Emotionally if not physically. That was a fact too. He'd controlled their money, their decisions, their life. Made her small and dependent. That was also true. Maybe Naomi wasn't the villain in this story. Maybe he was. The realization didn't come all at once. It came in pieces over days and weeks as Thomas sat alone in a motel room with nothing but time to think about what he'd done and who he'd become. And by the time he fully understood, it was far too late to fix any of it. Naomi was gone. His life was in ruins. And all he had left was the bitter understanding that he'd destroyed the best thing in his life with his own hands. 3 months after leaving, Naomi stood in front of a mirror in her apartment bathroom, studying her reflection. The bruises had faded completely, leaving no physical evidence of that last violent night. But the internal landscape had changed in ways that went deeper than skin. She looked different. Stronger maybe. Or just more tired. Healing wasn't linear. Some days she woke up feeling powerful and free. Other days the weight of 9 years pressed down on her chest and she couldn't remember why she'd thought she could survive alone. Today was a good day. She had a job interview at noon. The position was at Horizon House, a non-profit organization that provided support services to families in crisis. Administrative coordinator, organizing programs for women transitioning out of difficult situations. When Naomi had seen the posting, she'd stared at her computer screen for 10 minutes before finally clicking apply. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was a woman in crisis, transitioning out of a difficult situation, applying to help other women do the same thing. Maybe that made her qualified. Or maybe it made her a fraud. She dressed carefully in dark gray pants and a coral blouse. Bright but professional. She'd learned that bright colors helped. They pushed back against the gray days when everything felt impossible. Rita knocked on the bathroom door. You ready? I'm driving you. I can drive myself. I know you can. But I want to. Humor me. They'd been living together since that first night. Rita's 2-bedroom apartment had become a safe harbor where Naomi could rebuild without pressure. They watched movies. They cooked dinner together. They talked late into the night about everything and nothing. Rita had become more than a sister. She'd become a lifeline. The drive to Horizon House took 15 minutes through morning traffic. The building was a converted house in an older neighborhood, painted cheerful yellow with blue trim. A garden bloomed in the front yard, vegetables mixed with flowers. "You've got this," Rita said, parking at the curb. "Just be yourself. Tell them your story. They'll see what I see." "What's that?" "A survivor. Someone who knows exactly what their clients are going through." Naomi walked up the front steps and rang the bell. A woman in her 50s answered, gray curls framing a warm face. "You must be Naomi. I'm Patricia. Come in." The interior of Horizon House felt nothing like an office. Comfortable couches, soft lighting, children's toys in one corner, a bulletin board covered with photos of smiling families. It felt like hope had a physical address. Patricia led her to a small office and gestured to a chair. "Tell me about yourself." Naomi had rehearsed this part. "I have administrative experience from before my marriage. I took time away from the workforce, but I'm ready to return. I saw your posting and felt connected to the mission." "What connects you to it?" This was the moment. She could lie, keep it vague, protect her privacy. Or she could tell the truth and risk judgment. "I left an abusive marriage 3 months ago," Naomi said quietly. "I know what your clients are going through because I've been through it. I understand the fear and the planning and the courage it takes to walk away." Patricia's expression softened. "I'm sorry you experienced that. And I'm glad you got out." "Me too. You know this job isn't easy. You'll be working with women in active crisis. Women who are scared, angry, traumatized. Women who might remind you of yourself." "I understand. You'll need strong boundaries. Self-care routines. Therapy helps most of our staff." "I'm already in therapy. Twice a week." Patricia nodded approvingly. "Tell me what you think you could bring to this role." Naomi thought about the notebook hidden in her bathroom cabinet. The photos of bruises. The careful documentation. The months of planning her escape. "I understand strategic thinking. How to make plans and execute them carefully. How to stay calm under pressure. How to document everything because evidence matters. And I understand what it feels like to need help but be too scared to ask for it." The interview lasted an hour. Patricia asked questions about conflict resolution, multitasking, working with traumatized populations. Naomi answered honestly, drawing on her own experience even when it hurt. At the end, Patricia smiled. "I'd like to offer you the position. 25 hours a week to start, with possibility of full-time. Can you start next Monday?" Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes. Thank you. Thank you. We need people who understand this work from the inside." Outside, Rita was waiting in the car, scrolling through her phone. When Naomi climbed in with a huge smile, Rita screamed and pulled her into a hug. "You got it?" "I got it." They celebrated with lunch at a small cafe, splitting a sandwich and fries. Rita insisted on paying. "This is huge," Rita said. "Your own income. Independence. Doing meaningful work. It's just part-time. For now. But it's a start. And starts are everything." That evening, Naomi attended her support group at the community center. 10 women sat in a circle, ranging from early 20s to mid-60s. Different backgrounds, different stories, but all connected by the common thread of survival. The facilitator, Dr. Morgan, was a therapist who specialized in trauma. She had a calm presence that made the hard conversations feel safer. "Who wants to share tonight?" Dr. Morgan asked. Naomi raised her hand. "I got a job today." The group erupted in applause and encouraging sounds. These women understood what that meant. Employment wasn't just a paycheck. It was proof of life after abuse. It was reclaiming agency. "Tell us about it," Dr. Morgan said. "It's at a nonprofit that helps families in crisis. I'll be working with women who are going through what I went through." "Feels right. Scary but right." "What makes it scary?" Dr. Morgan asked. "What if I'm not healed enough? What if their stories trigger me? What if I can't help them because I'm still figuring out how to help myself?" Another woman, older with silver hair, spoke up. "You don't have to be completely healed to help someone else. Sometimes the best guides are the ones still on the journey." The words settled into Naomi's chest. She was still on the journey. Still healing. Still figuring out who she was without Thomas defining her. But maybe that was okay. Maybe healing wasn't about reaching some perfect endpoint but about moving forward, one day at a time. After group, a woman named Simone approached her. Around Naomi's age with dark skin and bright eyes. "You probably don't remember me, but we went to college together. Communications classes." Naomi studied her face and suddenly the memory clicked. "Simone Jefferson? You lived in Morrison Hall." "That's me." Simone smiled. I saw you here a few weeks ago but didn't want to intrude. I've been coming to this group for about 6 months. I had no idea you went through this too. My ex-boyfriend. We lived together for 3 years. He didn't hit me but the emotional abuse was constant. Took me forever to recognize it as abuse. They walked to the parking lot together, exchanging stories and phone numbers. By the time they said goodbye, Naomi felt like she'd reconnected with an old friend and made a new one simultaneously. That night, lying in bed in Rita's spare room, Naomi pulled out her journal. Her therapist had suggested writing as a way to process everything. Some entries were angry. Some were sad. Some were just confused. Tonight she wrote, I got a job today. At Horizon House. I'll be helping women like me. Women who are scared and brave and trying to rebuild. I keep thinking about that breakfast I served Thomas with my bruised face. How I smiled and stayed calm and pretended everything was fine. I was performing survival. Now I get to help other women stop performing and start living. Maybe that's why I went through all of this. Maybe my story can be a map for someone else's escape. She closed the journal and looked around the small bedroom. Rita's spare room wasn't fancy. Second-hand furniture. Walls that needed paint. But it was safe. Nobody hurt her here. Nobody controlled her here. And slowly, day by day, it was becoming home. The next Monday, Naomi started work at Horizon House. Patricia showed her around, introduced her to the staff, explained the programs. The organization offered emergency shelter, legal advocacy, job training, childcare support, and counseling. Everything a woman might need to leave a dangerous situation and build a new life. You'll be coordinating our skill-building workshops, Patricia explained. Resume writing, interview prep, financial literacy. And you'll help with intake when new clients arrive. Naomi's first week was overwhelming in the best way. She met women with stories that mirrored her own. She helped a young mother create her first resume. She sat with a teenager who'd left home after being hit by her father and listened while the girl cried. Each interaction reminded Naomi how far she'd come and how much further she had to go. But it also gave her purpose. Her pain wasn't wasted if it could help someone else. After work one evening, she stopped at a bookstore and bought 3 books on business administration. She'd started taking evening classes at the community college, working toward finishing her degree. Thomas had convinced her to drop out after they got married. Now she was picking up the threads of the life she'd set aside. In class, she was older than most students but not the oldest. The professor, a sharp woman in her 40s, called on her frequently. Naomi had been nervous the first few times, worried her answers would sound stupid after so many years away from school. But the words came easier than she expected. Her brain still worked. Her thoughts still had value. One night, walking to her car after class, she saw a man who looked like Thomas from behind. Same build, same haircut. Her heart rate spiked immediately. Her hands went cold. She froze on the sidewalk, keys gripped between her fingers like a weapon. The man turned around. Completely different face. Not Thomas at all. Naomi took several deep breaths, waiting for her heart to slow down. This happened sometimes. Phantom sightings. Her body reacting to threats that weren't there anymore. Her therapist called it hypervigilance, a normal response to trauma. You're safe, she whispered to herself. He can't hurt you anymore. The words helped. Not completely, not instantly. But enough to get her moving again. By the end of her first month at Horizon House, Naomi had helped coordinate 3 workshops and assisted with intake for 7 new clients. She'd also started attending a weekly lunch group with Simone and 2 other women from their support group. They called themselves the Phoenix Club, only half joking. Because we're rising from the ashes, Simone explained over Thai food. Becoming something new. Naomi liked that image. Not going back to who she'd been before Thomas, but becoming someone different entirely. Someone stronger. Someone who knew her own worth and wouldn't settle for less. One afternoon, Patricia called her into the office. I wanted to check in. How are you doing? Really? Good days and hard days, Naomi said honestly. But more good than hard lately. You're doing excellent work here. The clients respond well to you. You have a gentle way of pushing without pressuring. Thank you. I want to talk about increasing your hours. Moving you to full-time if you're interested. Naomi's breath caught. Full-time meant benefits, health insurance, steady income, real independence. I'm very interested. Good. We'll make it official starting next month. And Naomi? I see real leadership potential in you. When you're ready, I'd love to talk about you taking on more responsibility. Maybe running some of our programs. After the meeting, Naomi sat in her car and cried. Happy tears, grateful tears. 6 months ago she'd been trapped in a marriage that was killing her slowly. Now she had a job she loved, a path forward, people who believed in her. She texted Rita, "They're making me full-time." The response came immediately, "That's my sister. Told you that you were amazing." That evening, Naomi treated herself to dinner at a nice restaurant. Just herself, a good book and a glass of wine. She used to think eating alone meant loneliness. Now she understood it could mean independence. Choosing her own company. At the table next to her, a couple argued in whispers. The man's jaw was tight, his words sharp. The woman looked down at her plate, shoulders hunched. Naomi recognized that posture. That careful stillness designed to make yourself smaller, less of a target. She wanted to lean over and tell the woman she didn't have to live like that. That there were options, resources, ways out. But she didn't. You couldn't save someone who wasn't ready to be saved. She'd learned that at Horizon House. All you could do was be there when they were ready. Still, she left her Horizon House business card on the table when she paid her bill, face down so the couple wouldn't see immediately. Just in case. Walking to her car, she thought about Thomas. Wondered where he was, what he was doing. If he'd learned anything or if he was busy blaming her for everything that had gone wrong in his life. She didn't miss him. That was the surprising part. She'd expected to miss the good parts, the early days when he'd been charming and attentive. But even those memories felt tainted now. Like she'd been falling in love with a performance while the real person waited underneath, ready to emerge once she was trapped. What she missed was the idea of partnership. Coming home to someone. Sharing small moments. But she'd never really had that with Thomas. She'd had a manager, a controller, a man who saw her as an extension of himself rather than a separate person. Real partnership, the kind built on respect and equality, that was something she still believed in. Maybe someday. When she was healed enough. When she trusted herself to recognize red flags and walk away at the first sign. But for now she was content with her own company. Content with rebuilding. Content with the slow, difficult work of becoming whole again. Her phone rang as she reached her car. A known number. She debated not answering, but the protective order was in place. Thomas legally couldn't contact her. "Hello? Miss Edwards? This is Officer Martinez with the police department. I'm calling about your restraining order case. We have some information to share if you're available to come down to the station." Naomi's stomach tightened. "What kind of information?" "Your ex-husband attempted to contact you again. We have documentation. We'd like to discuss possibly filing charges." "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Naomi said. As she drove to the police station she felt surprisingly calm. Thomas hadn't learned. He was still trying to control, to intimidate, to violate boundaries. But each violation was evidence. Each attempt to reach her was proof that she'd been right to leave. The system was protecting her now. The law was on her side. And Thomas was learning, slowly and painfully, that actions had consequences. Naomi walked into the police station with her head high, ready to add another piece of evidence to the case she'd been building for 6 months. Ready to prove, again and again if necessary, that she was done being a victim. She was a survivor now. And survivors didn't back down. 6 months after filing for divorce, Naomi sat in the hallway outside family court, her hands folded in her lap. The marble floors and wood-paneled walls made everything feel official and intimidating. Rita sat beside her, scrolling through her phone but ready to provide support the moment Naomi needed it. Diane emerged from a side door in a sharp navy suit, her briefcase heavy with documents. "They're ready for us. You remember what we talked about. Stay calm. Answer honestly. Don't get emotional." "Exactly. The judge has seen all the evidence. Photos, recordings, financial records. Today is just for testimony and cross-examination." Diane squeezed her shoulder. "You've got this." They entered the courtroom. It was smaller than Naomi expected, less dramatic than television had led her to believe. The judge's bench dominated the front. 2 tables faced it, one for each side. Behind them, several rows of benches for observers. Thomas was already there with his attorney, Robert Brennan. He'd lost weight, Naomi noticed. His suit hung a little loose. His face looked drawn, tired. He glanced at her briefly when she entered, then looked away quickly. Good. She hoped he was uncomfortable. She hoped he felt a fraction of the fear she'd lived with for years. Judge Morrison entered, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. Everyone stood until she took her seat. "This is the final hearing for case number 2024 DV8847, Edwards vs. Edwards. Counsel, opening statements." Diane stood first. "Your Honor, this case is straightforward. My client, Naomi Edwards, endured years of physical and emotional abuse from her husband. She documented this abuse carefully, gathering photographic evidence, recordings, and witness testimony. She left when it became clear her safety was at risk. She now seeks dissolution of marriage with equitable division of assets, waited to compensate for the abuse she suffered. Brennan stood next. Your Honor, my client disputes the characterization of abuse. The couple had marital difficulties, yes. Arguments occurred, as they do in many marriages. But Mrs. Edwards has exaggerated isolated incidents to gain advantage in divorce proceedings. My client requests equitable division of community property and joint access to marital assets. Judge Morrison made notes. I've reviewed the evidence submitted by both parties. Ms. Foster, call your first witness. Diane called Naomi to the stand. The bailiff swore her in. Naomi sat in the witness box, her hands gripping the armrests. Please state your name for the record. Naomi Bennett Edwards. Ms. Edwards, can you describe the incident that occurred on January 10th of this year? Naomi had practiced this. She kept her voice steady. My husband and I had an argument about money. I'd noticed $3,000 missing from our joint account and asked about it. He became angry. He shoved me against the kitchen counter. Then he grabbed my face. She touched her jaw, remembering. His fingers left bruises. And what happened the next morning? I made him breakfast. I acted like everything was normal. Then I left. Why didn't you leave immediately after the assault? Because I'd been planning to leave for 6 months. I needed to execute my plan carefully. I needed documentation, resources, a safe place to go. Leaving immediately would have been dangerous. Diane walked her through the evidence. The photos projected onto a screen showed Naomi's bruised face in stark detail. The judge leaned forward to examine them closely. These photos were taken the morning after? Yes, Your Honor. And the earlier photos? Can you explain those? Naomi described each incident. The grab to her arm in December. The push that made her hit her hip on the table edge in November. Further back, to incidents she'd almost normalized until she started documenting them. Ms. Edwards, Judge Morrison asked directly, why did you stay so long? Naomi took a breath. Because I was scared. Because I had no money of my own. Because he'd convinced me I couldn't survive without him. Because I thought it was my fault. Because leaving is the most dangerous time for someone in my situation. Her voice cracked slightly. I stayed until I was strong enough to go. And smart enough to do it safely. Diane continued with financial questions. The joint account Thomas controlled. The credit cards in his name only. The way he'd isolated her from employment and independent income. Then it was Brennan's turn for cross-examination. He stood, adjusting his glasses. Mrs. Edwards, you claim my client was controlling about finances. But isn't it true you agreed to be a stay-at-home spouse? I agreed initially. But when I wanted to return to work, he refused to allow it. Refused? Or expressed his preference that you focus on the home. He told me I couldn't work. That it would reflect badly on him. That I needed his permission. Brennan pulled out documents. These bank statements show regular deposits into the joint account. Groceries, household expenses, personal spending. You had access to money. I had access to money he controlled. If I spent too much or asked too many questions, there were consequences. What consequences? Naomi looked at Thomas. He was staring at the table. He would get angry. Yell. Sometimes push or grab me. You say, sometimes. How often? Often enough that I learned not to question him. Brennan changed tactics. The emails between my client and Brielle Collins. You presented those as evidence of infidelity. But did you ever actually witness any physical affair? No. So you're speculating. I read their emails. The tone. The content. It was clear what was developing. But you never saw them together romantically. No. And yet you used this speculation to file for divorce. Diane objected. Asked and answered, Your Honor. Sustained. Mr. Brennan, move on. The cross-examination continued for another hour. Brennan tried to poke holes in her story, suggest she was exaggerating, imply financial motivation. But Naomi stayed calm. She had the truth on her side. And the evidence backed her up. When she finally stepped down from the witness box, her legs shook. Rita gave her a thumbs up from the gallery. Diane called Rita as a witness next. She testified about the bruises she'd seen. The fear in Naomi's voice on phone calls. The way she'd helped her move out. Did Naomi ever tell you she planned to exaggerate anything for financial gain? Diane asked. Never. She just wanted to be safe. Brennan's cross-examination of Rita was brief. She was a sympathetic witness, a concerned sister. Attacking her would only make Thomas look worse. Then it was Thomas's turn on the stand. He looked smaller somehow, sitting in the witness box. Less commanding. Brennan walked him through his version of events. The marriage had been good at first. They'd grown apart. Arguments happened, but he never meant to hurt her. The emails with Brielle were innocent, blown out of proportion. Naomi was vindictive, trying to take everything. When Diane stood for cross-examination, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Mr. Edwards, on January 10th, did you push your wife? Thomas hesitated. We had an argument. Things got heated. That's not what I asked. Did you push your wife? I might have. I don't remember exactly. You don't remember shoving someone hard enough to bruise them? It wasn't that hard. Diane projected the photos of Naomi's face. This is what not that hard looks like? Thomas paled. I didn't mean to hurt her that badly. But you meant to hurt her some amount? No. I was angry. I wasn't thinking. How many times did you not think and end up hurting your wife? I don't know. My client documented 7 incidents over 9 months. Does that sound accurate? If that's what she says. No, Mr. Edwards. That's what happened. Did you grab your wife's arm in December, leaving bruises? Probably. During an argument. Did you push her in November? Maybe. Did you control access to money? I managed our finances. Did you tell her she couldn't work? I suggested she focus on the home. Suggested or demanded? Thomas's jaw tightened. She was free to do what she wanted. Was she free to leave you? Of course. Then why did she have to plan her escape for 6 months? Why did she have to hide money? Why did she need a restraining order? Thomas didn't answer. Mr. Edwards, did you love your wife? Yes. Is that how you show love? With bruises and control and fear? Objection, Brennan said weakly. Argumentative. Withdrawn, Diane said, turning away. No further questions. The hearing lasted 4 hours total. By the end, Judge Morrison looked tired but resolute. I'll review all testimony and evidence. My decision will be issued within 10 business days. This hearing is adjourned. Outside the courtroom, Diane pulled Naomi aside. That went well. Really well. His testimony was damaging to his own case. What happens now? We wait. The judge will issue a written decision about property division, the divorce decree, everything. Will I have to see him again? Not if you don't want to. Once the decree is final, you're done. Rita drove Naomi home, both of them quiet. The day had been exhausting, emotionally draining. But underneath the fatigue, Naomi felt something else. Vindication. She told her truth. The evidence had spoken. And Thomas had admitted, under oath, to hurting her. That evening, Simone called. How did it go? Good, I think. Hard but good. Want company? I can bring wine and terrible snacks. That sounds perfect. They sat on Naomi's couch, now in her own apartment, eating chips and drinking cheap wine and talking about everything except the hearing. It felt normal. Simple. The kind of evening she dreamed about during those years when her life was controlled and monitored. 10 days later, Judge Morrison's decision arrived via email. Diane called immediately after Naomi opened it. We won. Everything. Everything. Divorce granted. Restraining order made permanent. Property division weighted 70-30 in your favor to compensate for abuse. He keeps the house but has to buy out your share. You get the newer car. He's responsible for all joint debts. And here's the best part, he has to pay your legal fees. Naomi couldn't speak. She sat on her couch, phone pressed to her ear, tears streaming down her face. Naomi? You there? I'm here. I can't believe it. Believe it? The judge saw through his lies. She saw what he did to you. And she made sure you're protected going forward. Diane's voice was warm. Congratulations. You're officially divorced. That word. Divorced. It should have felt sad like failure. Instead it felt like freedom. Thank you, Naomi whispered. For everything. You did the hard part. I just helped you tell your story. After hanging up, Naomi walked to her window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Thomas was getting the same news. Learning that he'd lost. That his version of events hadn't convinced anyone. That there were consequences for hurting people. She hoped he felt a fraction of the fear she'd lived with. But more than that, she hoped he learned something. That he got help. That he never did this to another woman. But that wasn't her problem anymore. Thomas was her past. And the future stretched ahead, bright with possibility. Naomi opened her laptop and started an email to Patricia at Horizon House. I wanted to let you know my divorce was finalized today. I'm officially free. And I'm ready to help more women find their own freedom. She hit send and closed the computer. Then she called Rita. It's over. I won. Rita screamed so loud Naomi had to hold the phone away from her ear. I'm coming over right now. We're celebrating. Bring ice cream. Already in the car. Naomi looked around her apartment. The yellow walls she'd painted herself. The red couch that made her smile. The plants thriving on her windowsill. The photos of her and Rita and Simone at a Phoenix Club lunch. Evidence of a life she was building brick by brick, choice by choice. She'd served Thomas breakfast with a bruised face and a secret plan. She'd endured his anger, his violence, his control. She'd documented everything and executed her escape with careful precision. And now she was free. Legally, officially, completely free. The woman who'd sat at that breakfast table 6 months ago would barely recognize her now. That woman had been scared, trapped, small. This woman was strong, independent, growing. Not healed completely. Maybe never healed completely. But healing. Growing. Becoming. And that was enough. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Naomi pushed a shopping cart through the produce section of the grocery store, mentally calculating recipes for the week. She'd become good at meal planning, at budgeting, at all the small skills of independent living. Tasks that once felt overwhelming now felt routine. She reached for a bunch of bananas and that's when she saw him. Thomas stood by the tomatoes, examining them with the same intense focus he'd always brought to grocery shopping. He looked thinner, older somehow. His shirt was wrinkled. He needed a haircut. Naomi's body reacted before her mind caught up. Heart racing. Palms sweating. The familiar spike of adrenaline that came from 9 years of conditioning. Her therapist called it a trauma response. Your body remembering danger even when your mind knew you were safe. She stood frozen, hand outstretched toward the bananas, watching him. He hadn't noticed her yet. She could turn around. Go to a different section. Avoid the interaction entirely. But she didn't move. Thomas selected 2 tomatoes, placed them in his basket. Turned. Saw her. His face went through several expressions in quick succession. Surprise. Confusion. Something that might have been longing or might have been regret. He took a step toward her. Naomi found her voice. Stop. He stopped. The restraining order is still active. 500 feet. You're too close. I know. His voice was quieter than she remembered. Can we talk? For 1 minute. No. Please. I just want to apologize. Naomi looked at him. Really looked. She saw the man who'd made her feel special during their courtship. The man who'd slowly isolated and controlled her. The man who'd left bruises on her skin and scars on her psyche. And underneath all of that, she saw a person who looked lost. But that wasn't her problem anymore. I don't need your apology, she said calmly. I needed you to not hurt me in the first place. But that ship has sailed. I've been going to therapy. Anger management. I'm trying to be better. Good. Do that for your next relationship. Leave me out of it. Thomas's eyes filled with tears. Actual tears. Naomi felt nothing watching them. No pity. No satisfaction. Just a detached observation that he was crying. I miss you, he said. You miss controlling me. That's not the same thing. That's not true. I loved you. You loved the version of me that did what you wanted and never complained. That's not love. That's ownership. Naomi picked up her bananas and placed them in her cart. I'm going to finish shopping now. You should go to a different section. Naomi. My name is Ms. Bennett now. And this conversation is over. She turned and walked away, pushing her cart down the aisle. Her hands shook slightly, but her steps were steady. Behind her, she heard Thomas say something else, but she didn't turn around. At the end of the aisle, she paused and took several deep breaths. Her heart was still racing. But she'd done it. She'd seen him. She'd set boundaries. She'd walked away. She finished her shopping quickly, paid, and loaded her car. As she pulled out of the parking lot, she saw Thomas sitting in his car, head down on the steering wheel. Part of her, a small part, felt sad for him. Not because she wanted him back. Not because she forgave him. But because he'd destroyed something that could have been good if he'd just been better. Kinder. Less controlling. But that sadness lasted only a moment before it was replaced by relief. Relief that she wasn't the one sitting in that car, trapped by poor choices and unwillingness to change. Relief that she'd gotten out. Relief that his pain was no longer her responsibility. She drove home to her apartment, unloaded groceries, and immediately called her therapist's answering service. "It's Naomi Bennett. I had an unexpected encounter with my ex-husband. I'm okay, but I'd like to move up my next appointment if possible." The receptionist called back within an hour. "We have an opening tomorrow morning at 9. "I'll take it." That evening, Simone came over for their standing Wednesday dinner. Naomi had cooked pasta, something she'd learned to make well after years of Thomas criticizing her cooking. "You seem off," Simone observed halfway through the meal. "What's going on?" Naomi told her about the grocery store. Simone listened without interrupting, then reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "How do you feel?" "Weird. Proud of myself for handling it well. But also shaky. Like seeing him reminded me that he's real, he's out there living his life." "Did you want him to not exist?" "Maybe. Or at least exist far away where I never have to think about him." "That's fair. But also you handled it perfectly. You set boundaries. You didn't engage. You walked away. That's exactly what you were supposed to do." "I know. But my body didn't get the memo. I'm still all wound up." "That's trauma. Your body remembering to be scared even when the actual threat is gone." Simone poured them more wine. "It gets better though. I promise. The first few times I saw my ex after leaving, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Now when I see him, I barely feel anything." "How long did that take?" "About a year. Maybe more. Healing isn't linear." They finished dinner and watched a comedy special, but Naomi only half paid attention. Her mind kept circling back to Thomas's face. The tears. The apology she didn't want or need. Later that night, Rita called to check in. Naomi told her the story. "Want me to come over?" "No, I'm okay. I just needed to hear your voice. You're allowed to be upset, you know. Even after everything, seeing him is still hard." "I'm not upset. I'm just processing." "That's allowed too." After hanging up, Naomi pulled out her journal and wrote about the encounter. Her therapist had taught her to document not just the events but her feelings about them. The physical responses. The thoughts that came up. "Seeing Thomas today reminded me how far I've come," she wrote. 6 months ago I would have been terrified. I would have apologized for existing in the same space as him. Today I set boundaries and walked away. I didn't owe him my time or my energy or my forgiveness. And I didn't give him any of those things. That feels like growth." The next morning, she sat in her therapist's office and talked through the encounter in more detail. "You said your body reacted before your mind?" Dr. Chin observed. "Tell me about that." "Heart racing. Sweating. Like I was in danger even though I knew I wasn't." "That's your nervous system trying to protect you based on past experience. It takes time to retrain that response." "How long?" "Different for everyone. But you're already doing the work. Therapy, support group, journaling. You're building new neural pathways that say you're safe now. It doesn't feel like enough. Healing from trauma is like recovering from a broken bone. You wouldn't expect your leg to be fully healed a week after the cast comes off. You have to rebuild strength. The bone has to fully knit. Same with trauma. Your nervous system was injured by years of abuse. It needs time to heal." Naomi nodded. She understood intellectually. Emotionally was harder. "Did you feel any desire to reconcile when you saw him?" Dr. Chin asked. "God, no. If anything, seeing him confirmed that I made the right choice." He looked lost. Like he'd been running on autopilot and suddenly realized he didn't know where he was going. "That's not your problem to solve." "I know. But there was a moment where I felt almost sorry for him." "That's empathy. It's a good quality. But empathy doesn't mean you have to fix his problems or take responsibility for his feelings." I told him I didn't need his apology. How did that feel? Powerful. Like I finally had control over the narrative. He wanted something from me and I didn't give it to him. Naomi paused. "Is that vindictive?" "No. It's self-protection. You're not required to make him feel better about his past actions. Especially when those actions hurt you." The session helped. By the time Naomi left, she felt more settled. Less rattled by the encounter. That afternoon at Horizon House, a new client came in for intake. Young woman, early 20s with a black eye and a toddler on her hip. "I need to leave," she said simply. "But I don't have anywhere to go." Naomi sat with her, took down information, explained the resources available. Emergency shelter. Legal advocacy. Job training. The whole network of support. "You really left your husband?" the woman asked at one point. "And you're okay now?" "I'm getting there. It's not easy. But it's worth it." Were you scared? Terrified. Still am sometimes. But I'm safer scared and free than I ever was comfortable and trapped. The woman nodded slowly. I want to feel safe. You will, Naomi promised. We'll help you get there. After the woman left with information packets and a safety plan, Patricia pulled Naomi aside. You're really good at this. The clients trust you. I've been there. That helps. It's more than that. You have a gift for making people feel heard without judgment. I just remember what it was like. How much I needed someone to believe me. Well, you're making a difference. Real, tangible difference in people's lives. That evening, Naomi met the Phoenix Club for their weekly dinner. Simone, plus 2 other women from their support group, Angela and Reese. They'd claimed a corner booth at their favorite restaurant and were already laughing when Naomi arrived. There she is, Angela said. We ordered you the pasta special. You know me too well. They talked about work, about families, about plans for the weekend. Normal things. The kind of conversations Naomi had been starved for during her marriage when everything had to be approved by Thomas. I saw my ex yesterday, Naomi said during dessert. At the grocery store. How was that? Reese asked. Weird. But okay. I handled it better than I expected. Did he try to talk to you? Yeah. I shut it down. Reminded him about the restraining order and walked away. Good for you, Simone said. First encounter is always the hardest. He said he's in therapy. Anger management. You believe him? Naomi thought about it. Maybe. But it doesn't matter. He can get all the therapy in the world. It doesn't change what he did. And it doesn't make me responsible for giving him another chance. Exactly right, Angela said. His healing is his job. Your healing is yours. And never the two shall meet. They raised their glasses in a toast. To healing separately and living well. Naomi clinked her glass against theirs and smiled. This was her tribe now. Women who understood. Who didn't judge. Who celebrated each small victory and supported each inevitable setback. Walking to her car later, she thought about Thomas sitting in his car with his head on the steering wheel. She hoped he was getting help. She hoped he learned from what happened. She hoped he never hurt another woman. But those hopes were abstract. Distant. Like wishing well for a stranger. Because that's what Thomas was now. A stranger who used to be her husband. A chapter in her story that had closed. And Naomi was writing new chapters now. Ones where she was the protagonist, not the victim. Where her choices mattered. Where her life was hers to build. She drove home through the city streets, past the house she used to share with Thomas, now sold to a young couple with a baby. Past the church where they used to attend, where everyone had thought they were perfect. Past the restaurant where he'd proposed, where she'd said yes without knowing what she was signing up for. All of it was behind her now. Geography changed. Memories faded. Life moved forward. And Naomi moved with it, stronger and wiser and finally free. 1 year after walking out of her marriage, Naomi stood in front of her bathroom mirror applying makeup. Not to cover bruises this time, just regular makeup for a regular day. The difference felt monumental. She'd grown her hair out. Cut it into a new style. Started wearing colors Thomas had never liked because he thought they were too bright. Today, a deep blue dress that made her feel confident and alive. Her apartment had transformed over the year. Plants everywhere, thriving under her care. Artwork from local artists covering the walls. Books stacked on shelves and side tables. A cozy red couch where she read every evening. Photos of her and Rita, her and the Phoenix Club, her and colleagues from Horizon House. Evidence of a life fully lived. Today was special. Patricia was announcing her retirement, and Naomi was being promoted to program director at Horizon House. A year ago, she'd been filing for divorce with no job and no prospects. Now she was leading programs that helped hundreds of women annually. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rita. Good luck today. So proud of you. Dinner after to celebrate? Definitely. Your place or mine? Mine. I'm making that pasta you like. Naomi smiled. Rita had been her constant through everything. Her safe place. Her reminder that family meant people who chose you, not just blood. At Horizon House, the staff had gathered in the main room. Patricia stood at the front, gray curls bouncing as she gestured while talking. 20 years, she was saying. 20 years of watching women transform their lives. It's been the greatest privilege of my life. And now I'm thrilled to announce that Naomi Bennett will be stepping into my role as director. Applause erupted. Naomi felt her cheeks flush as everyone turned to look at her. Naomi came to us a year ago, fresh from her own journey of survival. She brought not just her administrative skills but her deep understanding of what our clients experience. Under her leadership, we've expanded our job training program, added new support groups, and helped more women than ever. I can't think of anyone better to take this organization forward. After the meeting, Naomi found herself surrounded by colleagues offering congratulations. It felt surreal. A year ago, she'd been terrified to apply for a part-time position. Now she was running the whole organization. "You've earned this," Patricia told her later in the office. "Don't doubt that for a second. I still can't believe it's real sometimes." "Which part? The job or the freedom?" "Both." Patricia smiled knowingly. "It gets easier. The disbelief fades. Eventually you wake up and realize this is just your life now. Not something temporary or fragile. Just yours." That afternoon, Naomi led her first staff meeting as director. She prepared an agenda, outlined goals for the next quarter, gathered input from everyone. The meeting ran smoothly, productively. Afterward, several staff members told her how excited they were about the new direction. Walking to her car after work, Naomi realized she was smiling. Just smiling for no reason except that she was happy. When had that happened? When had happiness become her baseline instead of a rare visitor? She thought about the breakfast she'd served Thomas with a bruised face. That morning had felt like the end of everything. In reality, it had been the beginning. That evening, she drove to Rita's apartment for their celebration dinner. Rita had decorated with balloons and a banner that read, "Congratulations, Director Bennett." "You didn't have to do all this," Naomi said, laughing. "Yes, I did. This is huge. You're running a whole organization. My little sister is out here changing lives." They ate pasta and salad and garlic bread. Drank good wine. Talked about everything and nothing. "I'm dating someone," Rita said during dessert. "Her name is Kennedy. She's a physical therapist at the hospital." "Rita, when were you going to tell me?" "I'm telling you. It's new. Like 2 months new. But it's good. Really good." Naomi felt a surge of happiness for her sister. "I want to meet her. Soon. I promise. But enough about me. What about you? Any interest in dating?" Naomi considered the question. Over the past year, she'd been asked out a few times. A guy from her evening class. A woman she'd met at a coffee shop. Each time she'd politely declined. "Not yet. I'm still figuring out who I am without Thomas defining me. I don't want to jump into something before I'm ready." "That's wise. But also you're allowed to have fun. Dating doesn't have to be serious. Maybe eventually. Right now, I'm happy with my life as it is." And she meant it. She had work that fulfilled her. Friends who supported her. Family who loved her. Independence and safety and peace. Romance could wait until she was certain she could recognize red flags. Until she trusted herself to walk away at the first sign of control or manipulation. The next Saturday, the Phoenix Club met for brunch at their usual spot. Simone, Angela, and Reese were already at the table when Naomi arrived. "There's our director," Simone said, pulling her into a hug. "Look at you, all fancy and important." "Stop," Naomi said, laughing. "It's the same job, just with more responsibility. And more pay," Angela added. "Don't forget that part." They ordered mimosas and French toast and talked about their weeks. Angela had started her own small business doing bookkeeping. Reese had gone back to school for her teaching credential. Simone had gotten a promotion at her marketing firm. "We're all leveling up," Reese observed. "Remember when we first met at that support group? We were all such messes." "We're still messes," Simone said. "Just higher functioning ones." "I'll drink to that," Naomi said, raising her glass. They talked about their exes sometimes but less frequently now. Those men had become footnotes in their stories rather than main characters. The Phoenix Club had grown beyond their shared trauma into genuine friendship based on who they were becoming, not just what they'd survived. After brunch, Naomi walked through the park near her apartment. Kids played on swings. Couples held hands on benches. Dogs chased frisbees. Life happening in all its ordinary beauty. She thought about Thomas sometimes. Wondered where he was, what he was doing. She'd heard through the grapevine that he'd moved to another city. Started a new job. Whether he'd actually changed or just changed locations, she didn't know. But it wasn't her problem. He was living his life. She was living hers. And their paths would never cross again in any meaningful way. That evening, she video called her parents. They'd been horrified when they learned about the abuse, angry at themselves for not seeing it. Naomi had forgiven them. They'd visited twice, seen her new life, met Rita's girlfriend, expressed pride in how far she'd come. "How's the new job?" her mother asked. "Good. Challenging but good. I'm learning a lot. We're so proud of you, honey. You took something terrible and turned it into purpose. After the call, Naomi sat on her couch with a cup of tea in her journal. She'd been keeping it faithfully for a year, documenting her healing journey. Year 1 complete, she wrote. I left with nothing but a plan and a suitcase. Now I have a career, a community, a life that's entirely mine. The nightmares are less frequent. The hypervigilance is fading. I can go whole days without thinking about Thomas or what he did to me. That feels like victory. She paused, thinking about what else to write. I'm not the same person who served that breakfast. That woman was scared and small and trapped. I'm learning to be bigger, bolder, to take up space without apologizing, to trust my instincts, to believe I deserve good things. Another pause. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe someday I'll be ready for romance again. Maybe I'll adopt a dog. Maybe I'll go back to school for my master's degree. Maybe I'll travel to places Thomas never wanted to go. The possibilities feel endless. And for the first time in years, that doesn't scare me. It excites me. She closed the journal and looked around her apartment. This small, bright space that was fully hers. No one to tell her how to decorate. No one to criticize her choices. No one to make her feel small. Her phone buzzed. Simone texting the group chat. Movie night next Friday? My place. A chorus of yes responses followed. Plans made. Friendships maintained. Life continuing forward. Naomi added her yes to the thread and smiled. She thought about the title someone might give her story. The breakfast that changed everything. It was accurate. That morning had been the pivot point. The moment between before and after. But really, the breakfast itself wasn't what changed everything. The change had started months before, when she'd found those emails and made the decision to fight back. When she'd opened the secret bank account. When she'd contacted Diane. When she'd chosen herself over the illusion of safety. The breakfast had just been the performance. The final act of a play she'd been writing for months. And the standing ovation had been walking out that door and never looking back. Now, a year later, Naomi was writing a new story entirely. One where she was the hero, not the victim. Where her choices mattered. Where her life was an adventure instead of a prison sentence. She stood up, walked to her window, and looked out at the city lights beginning to glow as evening settled in. Somewhere out there, other women were serving breakfast to men who hurt them. Other women were planning their escapes. Other women were wondering if they were strong enough to leave. Naomi hoped her story could be a map for them. A reminder that leaving was possible. That healing was real. That life after abuse could be better than anything that came before. She'd served breakfast with a bruised face and a secret plan. She'd executed that plan with precision and courage. She'd survived the aftermath, the court case, the fear and doubt and slow rebuilding. And now, 1 year later, she was more than a survivor. She was thriving. Growing. Becoming. The phone rang. Rita. Hey, Kennedy wants to know if you're free for lunch tomorrow. She wants to meet the famous sister I keep talking about. I'd love that. Bring your appetite. We're going to that new Ethiopian place downtown. Perfect. Text me the time. Naomi hung up and returned to the window. The city stretched out before her, full of possibility. Full of life. Full of tomorrow and the day after and all the days beyond. She'd served him breakfast. And by the time the plate was cleared, her entire life had changed. Not because of what he did to her that morning or the night before. But because of what she'd chosen to do for herself. The courage she'd found. The strength she'd built. The freedom she'd claimed. Naomi Bennett had served her last breakfast as a wife. Everything since then had been a feast of her own making. And she was just getting started. The future glowed before her like those city lights. Bright. Beautiful. Hers.